Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our Ask the Experts webinar. Today we have three pool professionals with us from the Pool Management Group in Carolina Pool Management. Looking forward to helping y'all get ready for the upcoming pool season. Um, my name is Ben Rhodes. I'm the Senior Vice President with CAMS. Been hosting our webinar series for about 6 years now. We do post all of these on our camsmgt.com website. So if you haven't seen the website, been to the website, it's under the board member resources tab. And so we do have a lot of great content available for y'all to review. We will be taking questions throughout the session, so please feel free to type in your questions in the Q&A feature of the Zoom screen. If you have those, get those questions in, I will read them to our host and hopefully get all our questions answered. We'll try and go till about 5:30. Hopefully we don't run long, but depending on time, we'll see how we do. So please, again, feel free to ask questions. So Michael, Brandon, Luke, I'll let you give a quick introduction and tell us all about pools.
You got it. Thank you, Ben. Excited to be here. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. My name is Michael Brown. I'm the president of the Pool Management Group. Going on my 14th year with the company. We have two wonderful pool experts on the call as well. We have President and General Manager Brandon Vaughn from Carolina Pool Management Charlotte, and then Luke Pfizer, who is a VP at Pool Management Group, but is also heading up our Greater Raleigh Pool Management chapter. And so the two of them are going to be very, very involved with all things in the Carolinas, and as well as, so we're going to be talking a little bit about compliance today, health department inspections and things of that nature. But Ben, we're ready to rock. Do you want to control our slides? Perfect. Excellent. I mentioned the Pool Management Group, the company that I actually work with. The Pool Management Group and our family of companies, we make up the largest privately held pool management organization in the United States. We're located in 17 different locations, 17 different markets across the U.S. We've been in existence for around 43 years. And our first flagship company was actually born out of the Atlanta, Georgia area. We have two locations in Charlotte with fully local teams. Carolina Pool Management Charlotte, who I mentioned before, that serves communities in and around South Carolina. Have also been in business for about 31 years. We have Greater Raleigh Pool Management, which actually is our newest branch, which is located in the Raleigh, Durham, and Triangle area. We also have Carolina Pool Management Greensboro in the Greensboro area. And then we also have Aquatic Management of Charlotte, which is located in North Charlotte. A couple other things is that we have a breadth of individuals who are actually involved in this. Angelo Cantulis, our general manager in Greensboro. Luke, who I mentioned, who's going to be joining us on this call. Jeff Gackel, who is the president of Carolina Pool Management. He heads up our construction and repair division as well. He's actually one of the pioneers of the Pool Management Group, and helped us kind of establish ourselves as a national brand. Brandon Vaughn, his number two, who grew up into the general manager position, as well as Adam Lund, who actually joined us not too long ago as our Aquatic Management of Charlotte, North Charlotte representative, and then of course myself. So what do we have in common? And by we, I mean pool management companies and property management companies. For one, we're in the business of serving people and communities. We serve a lot of patrons. We serve over 250 communities across the Carolinas alone, which are home to thousands and thousands of patrons. I think we actually did a poll serving roughly around 100,000 individuals throughout the course of a few summers. And so we're touching a lot of individuals and making sure that people are safe. In general, we actually run about 2,200 pools nationwide. We actually manage about 70 million gallons of water, and we hire around 5,500 lifeguards every single summer. So it's a lot of humans, a lot of individuals, but we have a lot of eyes and ears out at those pools as well. For everyone who's joining the call too, you guys juggle a lot of balls. You wear many, many, many hats. And so one of our roles is to make sure that we're taking a lot of those headaches away, and we leverage a lot of our experience to do so. So many of our competitors serve even more individuals and communities across the Carolinas, and so you're having an opportunity to deal with a lot of those individuals as well. Pool management is extremely complex. It's a very, very large task, and I know that it's just one part of the pie for you guys, and so that's where we come in. Okay, so what we're going to be talking about today, and I'm about to pass it off to Luke. We're going to be talking about opening your pools with confidence. We're going to talk about rules, risks, and readiness. What's the best way to get you guys ready for the summer and the swim season? We're going to be talking about the opening process and timelines. Okay, that's everything from inventories as well as just in general making sure that you have all supplies out at the pool. We'll talk a little bit about staffing and the things that we need from our end, and then we'll talk about making sure that all managers and community association managers have what they need in order to get started. We're going to be talking about health departments. That's going to be health inspectors, as well as everything from permitting to the actual inspection itself. We're going to be talking about VGB requirements. That's an acronym that gets thrown around a lot in the swim world. VGB actually stands for Virginia Graham Baker, which is a federal law that requires main drain covers and what we call suction outlet fitting assemblies to be regulated to help with anti-entrapment as well as disembowelment. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. We'll talk about our staffing requirements as well as our staffing protocols as we get ready for the season. And then we'll talk a little bit about budgeting repairs and how we can help ensure that your pools are operating in the best way possible. Okay. And Luke, over to you.
All right. Hey, everybody. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. It's a beautiful March day to open pools, and Duke's struggling on my other screen next to me, too. So it's just a great day, great time right now. So I've got about 6 slides on some different things that we and hopefully your pool provider, if it's somebody other than us, is taking care of for you right now. We'll stop a few times, and if you have any questions, we're happy to answer those. Brandon will probably do most of the answering, but one of the things that's going on right now is if you have an uncovered pool that you're managing, we're doing weekly service there. 1 time a week, which that's very important. You want to know how often your pool provider is going during the off season because you want to avoid accumulation of leaves and red clay and any kind of thing that will stain the pool. So winter service just keeps on going. In January, at least for us, we fill out a ton of health department paperwork. So you and your communities may be receiving permit fees because as we fill out that paperwork and submit those forms to the health departments, we then have to bill the fee that we're paying with the health department. And really, a lot of these items go for North Carolina. Brandon will have some subtle nuances for South Carolina as well, just so you know. Another thing you should be receiving from your provider is what we call facility inventory inspection lists. These are lists of items that include things that we need to both run and operate the pool as well as pass health inspection. So they're super important. Things like signage, flow meters, ring buoys, all right, for safety and things like that. You know, this is a key thing that we need help with, which is getting approval for these lists of items. And for communities that want to kind of take care of it on their own, that's fine, but know that there's a deadline because those items have to be there at the pool by the time of health inspection. And if they're not, then we're going to go ahead and get those off our truck and get them installed so we can pass that health inspection. We also supply all kinds of commercial grade items. And so you want to make sure if you have a community that wants to do it themselves, they're getting the right commercial type of items for that pool. Any questions on this slide before we keep it moving?
Not yet.
Cool. Okay, so in February, and maybe even ongoing, depending on your provider, we're delivering janitorial supplies to all of our pools. We do bathrooms at every pool that we run, and we try to stock enough to make it through the season. We don't want to have any excuse for not having toilet paper or paper towels in a dispenser and running out. There's nothing worse. We're also restoring water at all of our facilities. For us, this is done already. It happens by the end of February. And so if we've had any freeze damage, we've reported that already. But obviously this was a kind of a crazy cold winter. And so you may be receiving some freeze damage quotes from your provider. Now I'll just say you want to make sure what kind of winterization was done there. And if you have any kind of warranty from that winterization. We have a freeze damage guarantee in our winterization. We blow out all the lines with air, so there shouldn't be water in any of our potable water lines. And so, any kind of freeze damage would be on us as it pertains to the potable water lines themselves. Some of our other competitors do it a little bit differently. And so again, just something to stay attuned to as you help you with your communities on that. We're also starting up all of our systems in March. And so that means even if the pool's still covered, for us, the water is going to be moving underneath it so that water doesn't get algae and organic growth as it starts to warm up. And so your community members may hear some loud noises from the pump room. That's okay. We have those pumps running. And because we're turning all of those pumps on after they've been dormant for so much time, you may have some repair proposals come in for things like impellers, mechanical seals, things to do with that pump after it's been turned back on. And so we're in crunch time. Lead time on parts is key. And so quick approval and your help in that is huge as we try to make sure we make it to that health inspection deadline.
Luke, one thing I do want to mention, during the winter months, we actually do have protocols where our technicians are actually bumping motors and pumps and turning them on during the winter time just to keep them moving. A lot of times those will seize up. However, that's one reason why we start a little bit earlier as well, is to make sure there are no surprises come permitting time.
That's right.
Okay, Luke, I know there are a couple of questions around pool covers, and that happens to be on your next slide. So
perfect.
Awesome. Well, so I'll say a few things about them, and then if you want to read the questions, Ben, we can answer them. I was out pulling pool covers today. I think your providers are probably doing that as well. For me, our goal is to be done pulling covers by April 1 because that's really the earliest we can start health inspections. And so we have our crew out doing that, deck vacuuming pools, getting covers stored, bringing water levels up, right? So they are going to see a higher than usual water bill right around this time as we bring that water level up. We're setting furniture out, and so that's going to seem pretty early to some board members, some community members, but again, we're tied down by the health department, and so that's happening right now. What questions did we have on those, Ben?
Well, you mentioned April 1 as maybe a date to hit, but any standard guidelines on when to remove the pool cover?
Brandon?
There's not really a standard. More important thing is that we're treating the water underneath once those temperatures start to come up, trying to make sure that we prevent the algae growth. We have some pools that we don't pull until May because of heavy cottonwood that falls during this time of year or other things that can clog up skimmers, drain covers. There are certain variables that can really affect your pumps and things like that around a pool. So every pool is going to be a little bit different, but it is important to make sure that that water is being treated under the cover and kept up with chemically.
Okay, and then schools of thought on covered versus uncovered during the off season.
Great question. Yeah, go ahead, Brandon.
Well, I mean, of course, we're big fans of that, but the advantage to homeowners when they get a pool cover is the pool covers provide a UV protection that allows us to be able to turn the pumps off during the off season and completely winterize your pump room. So there's generally a huge energy savings during that time. We still have some work to do even on covered pools. We have to come up and still keep the leaves because the tannic acid can still stain a pool on top of the cover. Right. But generally, you'll see a little bit of a bump in the longevity of your plaster. and a significant energy savings. Typically, a pool cover, depending on the size, is about a 3-year payoff, and the cover is going to last you about 12 to 15 years during that time.
Yes, I'm in the same camp as well. And Ben, one of the things that I like to do is I'm trying to keep organics out of the pool as best as possible. A lot of covers that we actually install, they're mesh covers. So they're not only safety covers, but they also keep a lot of the heavy debris out. And as Brandon mentioned, the tannins and leaves can stain plaster. We try to keep a little bit of the pollen out as well, if that's possible. Obviously, if it rains and those covers are permeable, so you're still getting some rainwater that flows back through. But the more that you can keep out of the pool, the better.
Is there a water temperature that you see where algae starts to grow more rapidly when a cover comes off?
There is, yeah, absolutely. Luke, are we 40 degrees? Is that where we landed?
We're pretty good up to like 55, honestly, around here. But it'll turn pretty quick above that temperature. And a lot of the way, Ben, that we are able to keep the pools blue through February when we turn the pumps back on is because of the way we've closed them in the fall. We run the pump under the cover longer than most, kind of almost through, for me, really through November 1. And so because of that, that water is nice and blue till it gets below that 50, 55 degrees. So.
Yeah.
And there's chlorine in the water. It just doesn't leave as quick when the water is cooler, right?
Yes.
That's right.
Okay.
Right. The sun degradation. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Okay. That's it on pool covers.
Cool.
We'll go to the next slide.
Good questions.
Yeah. I actually prefer uncovered pools, not to go against Michael and Brandon, but selfishly they let us keep a larger staff around in the fall. But if I was an HOA board member, I would cover my pool. So, health inspections. So in April and May, we've got tons of health inspections going on. So your pool provider is tied up at each pool from 1 hour to, honestly, it could be 3 hours if you catch the wrong inspector, right? It can be pretty brutal. They're very stringent. So we carry a ton of things on our truck to help us pass. We've got a lot of ways to kind of work around certain inspectors and get pools passed. It's really an art because of how difficult they are. But if a board member walked by a pool or a patron did, they'd see a pool that wasn't quite swim ready. There might be some debris on the bottom. And so I just want to note that, pools are close to swim ready, but in health inspection time, they're not perfect ready for opening day. And so that's why mid-April into mid-May, after the inspection for us, we're coming back and doing a final bathroom deep clean. We're bringing a pump to the pool itself called a deck pump to get all the little fine sediment that if the pool isn't opened well, when you get swimmers in there, their feet will start to kick up all this little fine debris and they'll hate it, right? Because if that pool wasn't deck vac like that. And then we'll clean the tile kind of at the last minute because we want it to hold right to opening day, past the pollen time like Brandon mentioned and all of that stuff. And then finally, in May, we start all of our preseason pool meetings. So each of our staffed pools, we have a lot of lifeguarded pools, a lot of gate attendant pools. They'll have a preseason meeting in the afternoon or after our employees get off school where we'll bring our staff, our supervisor, we'll invite board members and of course property managers are welcome as well. And we just kind of set the tone for the season. It's a really important meeting at the specific pools that our people are working at. And so we're running pretty wide open because we have those afternoon meetings after the health department inspections. And on weekends, our lifeguard instructors are training lifeguards because we train all of our own staff. So that's what May kind of looks like. And board members are invited again to those pool meetings.
So we have a number of South Carolina communities on the call. Do the health inspectors and inspections differ in South Carolina from North Carolina?
They do. And we have a little bit more on slide 11 for that, but they don't require preseason inspections. So what they do is you have to give them your lockbox combination or access to the facility, and then they'll show up 3 times during the summertime for surprise inspections. They have a list of items once they go there that are automatic closure items, so they have the ability to close the pool down based on failure. Those are chemical, signage, safety equipment, pool phone, gates, log books have to be completely filled out. Those are all items. Those are all items that are automatic closure items from them. Then they'll also give you a list when they go for their inspection of other items that are not closure, but they ask for those items to be fixed within the next 10 days. And if they're not, then they can close you the second time for not having those fixed.
And Brandon, drain covers are included under that safety
Yes,
requirement.
yes, they don't monitor VGBA themselves, but they have to be intact and make sure there's nothing broken on the drain covers themselves.
So we did have another pool pump and pool cover question come in. So is the recommendation not to run pumps in the winter if it's covered, and or if you have if you're without a pool cover, do you need to run your pumps?
Yeah. Oh, Brandon, you go, Brandon.
Well, but this kind of involves the longevity of your plaster. So you have a pretty expensive plaster surface on most of these pools. Some of them are fiberglass, and to keep most of those, you expect those to last 8 to 12 years, and those chemicals have to stay balanced in order to reach that. So there's no etching or scaling or different things like that. The UV protection that the covers provide allow those chemicals to stay in the pool and the pool to stay balanced for a longer time without running the pool pump. And again, temperature has a pretty big effect on that as well. But that's where the pool cover comes into play for that.
Okay. Other questions? I know we had another question. If a portion of the concrete pool deck edge is replaced, does that typically affect the bonding wire? And if so, how? Should it be replaced? Is it replaced or spliced? Is a permit required to do this? So starting to get very specific into electrical bonding.
Right.
This is going to depend on the county or the location of the pool. You do have a bond wire that bonds anything that's metal within 6 feet of your pool. That's going to go for your ladder anchors, your handrails. If you have any chair lifts, swim team poles, up to any kind of slide or any other feature that may be in place there. So that bond wire is going to run around the edge of the pool and bond to anything that's metal. So it is possible that if you cut a section of the concrete deck, that it can mess with that bond wire. Union County in particular, and there's going to be some counties associated with that. If that is cut and replaced, they do require you to go through an electrical inspection through the county for that. And you do have to pull a permit when that happens. Again, every county is different. Mecklenburg County has not necessarily required that in the past, just picture documentation. And South Carolina has not required that, but other counties around here have.
And Brandon, you and Luke will offer continuity tests as options at the beginning of the season. Is that right?
Yes, and we do that when we plaster pools as well. We do continuity tests to make sure that everything's bonded and taken care of at that point. And also in North Carolina, anytime you change out a pool motor, you have to go through an electrical inspection at that time as well. So that tests all the continuity around the metal on the pool as well.
So Brandon, I mentioned I'd ask this question, and you may have a slide on it, but pool decks and letting residents on the pool deck prior to the health inspection and getting your permit.
It is not supposed to be the case that anyone is inside the pool fence prior to the health inspection taking place. We do have pools that have gotten annual permits, even with the pool being covered, to be able to allow this. Some places have wanted to have board meetings on site, things like that. And we've done annual permits for that, which in Mecklenburg County is twice the price. Other counties, it's the same price. And all that's required is just an extra inspection that takes place in the fall.
So with the, well, I guess with the pool cover on, you're not maintaining water quality, but
They notate that during the inspection.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll get into the health department.
Yeah, I think I have just a few more, right, Brandon, before it flips to you?
Yep.
Okay. So again, just wanted to highlight some of the key touch points for the property managers that we partner with. So again, quick approval of those inventory items. You know, some HOAs are very quick to approve. Some take some time, have to wait for a meeting. But whatever y'all can do to help get quick approval of those very necessary items from that pool part list, that's big. Pool phones can be a real big problem for us if power shut off to them or service is shut off to them. And so just confirming those are on with service active is huge. They, of course, have to be hardlined in. And when we're there for the inspection, we call the 911 operator and they must be able to call us back. And they must be able to share the address of the pool without us prompting them or telling them the address. And so if the address is not on file, it's not just something that they can fix. The provider has to fix it. And the last time that happened to me, it was 1 or 2 days lost. And then you got to get back on the health inspection schedule. So the pool phone is a big pain point, and you know, keeping that on and active is huge. And the same thing goes for the gate fob system. Sometimes we'll get to a health inspection and we'll have been turned off, or it'll be down and we need to get a tech out. That fence has to latch, and it has to self-close and all of those things. And so, you know, we can fix some of the things in regards to gates. You know, we're pretty handy when it comes to it. But if the fob system's down completely, we got no shot. So.
Brandon, do you want to talk a little bit about the call boxes as well, the 911 call boxes?
Yeah, the same rules apply to those. Those are allowed. But the main change, and this took place, I believe it was 4 years ago in the state of North Carolina, that the 911 had to be able to call back to the number that it was being called from. So as long as that can happen, then you are able to use the box.
How about signage for 911 phones?
You have to have a sign that says 911 on there, identifying the phone, and then it has to have the address and phone number on that sign as well. If the phone is not visible from the pool deck, many times they'll require an actual sign to be posted that notifies where the pool phone is. Sometimes that's filled out on the pool rule sign. Sometimes that's a separate sign that they require from there.
So, question did just come in about cell phones. And I know, Luke, you mentioned hardwired phone. So where do they draw the line on cell phones, hardline, and then how close proximity? Because you know, we have some pools that are phones that are inside a guard room or inside the clubhouse. Where you know, do you know?
Well, it has to be accessible. So if there's inside of a guard room, then you have to have staff on there with access to those phones. And again, generally, if you can't see the phone, there has to be a sign identifying the location for it. Cell phones are a difficult thing. The power has to be hardwired to it as well. So it can't be a cell phone that doesn't have power 24 hours a day. And again, it has to be hardwired to where the address and phone number automatically show up and the call back to it. But if it's battery operated, they will not allow that as a primary 911 phone at that point.
And so this question has to do specifically if we're having issues with the hardwired phone, can cell phones suffice? So I guess the question is no, or the answer is no. Just make sure that that phone is working when the health inspector comes. Otherwise, you will have, you know, your pool will be closed.
With all the technology, it's the one thing that hasn't changed with technology for all these years.
Yep.
It's automatic closure in every county and every state that I'm aware of.
Okay. A few more questions around door locks or gates and eating and drinking. So I'm not sure if you have that later in the.
Nope.
Okay.
Not even.
Well, so do pool gates have to lock? We replaced ours and it latches, but it does not lock.
So pool latches have to be 54 inches high in North and South Carolina. 54 inches high, be self-closing, self-latching. South Carolina takes it a little bit further, has to close from 15 degrees, 45 degrees, 60 degrees, and 90 degrees during their inspection. But it has to be 54 inches high, or that can be overridden by a key fob or keyed entry, something that takes a manual process to unlock that gate. Other than that, it has to be self-closing, self-latching with a 54-inch high latch.
And I
So,
do know inspectors take that very serious, and they will pull out their tape measure. So yeah, make sure your door does latch and does self-close.
that's right. And the magnetic locks as well, Brandon.
Yes,
So there's
same thing
usually
as,
a delay when you have that contactor, right?
yep,
Yeah.
yep. So you got to make sure it doesn't bounce off when it hits it to stay stuck.
Okay, I'll hold on the next question, so we'll jump to the next screen.
Cool. Just a couple other things. Again, help us make sure trash service remains active. That's been a struggle at a few communities I can think of. And then ensure that all the utilities stay active. We've had power shut off at various moments, and so these are just some of the things that y'all really help us with, and make sure that there's no interruption right before the health inspection in a critical moment.
And I see your comments about a larger than usual water bill
That's
with the
right. That's right.
pools.
Yeah, I had it on a few slides because we get the questions. There's not a pool leak. No, where we're filling the pool sometimes as much as 2 feet, even 3 feet, depending how much rain there's been in an area. Because we do drop it in the fall if we have a covered pool, and if we have an uncovered pool, at least for us, we blow the fill line. I recently found out that some other providers do not blow the fill line. I just think it's too risky because that fill line is right near ground level and it could freeze. And so for us, we do blow all of our fill lines even at our uncovered pools. And so water is going to be a little bit low, and we're going to bring it back up in the spring.
Also, fine organics like pollen, things that are in the air during the springtime cause more backwashing for us as well. Those things will drive the pressure up on the filters really quickly, and we have to backwash a little more frequently when that's during the heavier times of year.
And backwashing is, for those that don't know.
That's where we clean the filters. So um, basically, anything that passes through your strainer pot basket or is small enough to pass through your strainer pot basket, such as pollen, dirt, clay, those things will pass through your strainer pot basket and get caught in your filter. After a certain amount of time, that pressure will build up in your filter, and the way that we clean it is reversing the flow of water and backwashing your filter to waste. It goes most of the time. It's tied into either your sewer line or your um, storm drain system, and we have to do that every time the pressure builds up, or else we'll blow a filter up.
Okay. Luke, is this one still you?
I think this is Brandon. Is that right, Brandon?
This one is you, but I
Oh,
can
I'm
take
happy to do it. Here we go. A couple more areas. Well, these are actually some different areas of kind of increased scrutiny that at least I've seen over the past few years. Different health inspectors really hone in on. One's new this year, but fencing. So the word footholds is so prevalent in the Carolinas. Footholds. It's basically places where the health department is saying, somebody could step here and then hop over the fence. I mean, that person would have to be so agile and like an incredible athlete, but they think all these things are footholds. But if there's gaps between pickets, it's going to be a problem. They'll be out there measuring. And so fencing, you may hear some things on fencing. For us, we use a lot of plexiglass in those situations, and so there may be some bills for plexiglass, which is weird, but that's to get past the inspector's fencing requirements.
So that started actually in 2009. North Carolina attempted to pass a law where the fencing had to be replaced and met a new set of standards. There ended up being a few lawsuits, so they backed down off of not grandfathering any of the fences. So in return for that, they became a whole lot tougher on where the fences are. So things like footholds, gates, meeting the new standards, all of that became a whole lot more difficult after that took place.
And there could be a variance between the way the inspectors enforce this. I found some don't spend a lot of time on the fence, others do. Flow regulations. There's a new kind of flow rule this season, and that is that pools with what they call a flow reduction they may need a new type of flow meter. Okay, so the flow meter is tied into the pumping system, and it helps us know how many gallons per minute of water are going through the pumping system. So there are some pools with main drain covers in the bottom of the pool, those two covers typically that are in the pool floor. Those covers have a maximum flow rate. And sometimes the pump in the pump room has a higher flow rate than the drain covers can handle. So for those pools, we use the flow meter to prove that the true flow rate of the pump is actually less than the main drain cover flow rate. All that really matters for you is in those situations, which it's our job to identify which those are, we have to propose a different kind of flow meter that is more cumbersome to install and costs a lot more money. I've found it's about 10% of pools, and that flow meter can cost anywhere from $500 to $2,000 to install. Sometimes we have to do some replumbing as a part of the repair. And this is the first season that they are going to be enforcing this, from my understanding. So we've already gotten our pools ready for that in most situations, but you may be seeing proposals on flow meters that you've never seen before. So.
And Luke, there is a certain type of flow meter that actually gets us to where that percentage or that error is not as great as other flow meters. Isn't that right?
Yeah, there's a couple kinds that do it. And especially on larger pipe, which means a more difficult plumbing job to repair it, that's when it comes into play. Pools with larger pipe. Yeah.
Okay, and pool decks.
Yeah, and then trip hazards. Again, this is an area where there's a lot of inspector variance, in my opinion. But if there's an elevation change greater than half an inch, they can call out that spot, and they can fail a pool if they want to. Now, oftentimes what will happen is they'll write on the permit, look, we're going to let you go through this season, but it has to be repaired before next season. Sometimes they'll say, no, this is to the point where it has to be fixed now. So we're always looking for elevation changes as we kind of do our opening visits starting in January of each year. But trip hazards are definitely something they're looking for as they go through the pool decks.
So I know the freeze thaw cycle can help lift deck drains, right? So other things that may cause decks to change from year over year.
Well,
Yeah.
settling such as the
Settling.
soil underneath it as well, and moisture and freeze thaw, just like you said, all of those can have an impact on the decks.
Yep. Root systems as well can lift decks.
Yep.
We've seen that before. And really erosion too. Erosion can actually create some additional or maybe even premature settling on some of and it usually happens in corners.
Okay. Brandon, are these?
All right. This is me. So a big part that started back in 2008 of our health department inspections is the BGB/VGBA, is now called. This is a federal law that came into play in 2008, and it can bring fines if not in compliance from the federal level. So some health departments will monitor this. All of them in North Carolina do. South Carolina does not, but again, we still have to be in compliance because it is a federal law at that point. All of these drain covers on the bottom of your pool have a set lifespan. Some are 5 years, some are 7 years, some are 10 years. Some of them have a lifetime lifespan for it, but you have to go down and check the screws for those and change the screws every 3 years for those as well. The new law that came into place in 2017, they updated the law, and this put a stricter requirement on the sump underneath the drain cover. Now every drain cover has either a specific standard of what goes underneath it, or the flow rating will change based on the spacing between the pipe underneath and the size of the pipe underneath it. So it made things a lot more difficult after the 2017 law came into place. Your pool provider should be the expert on this and should be able to help guide you through this process. But again, every county is different. The requirement's going to be different. The paperwork that's needed to be submitted for your permit is going to be different per county, as well as what they require as far as engineering. We dive pools and replace this at any point possible. We don't want to drain pools and have to cut things open if we don't have to. It's an expense, and it's pretty painful to have to do in the springtime when we're trying to get pools ready to open. So we try to dive the pools and avoid this whenever we can.
So Brandon, why don't you talk a little bit about the flow and the forms that you have to fill out to bring these pools into compliance?
So safety data compliance forms have to be filled out for every county in North Carolina. Mecklenburg County, for instance, it's only whenever we change the drain covers, but all the other counties we have to submit every single year when we do the permitting. On those forms, we have to identify the pump that's on site, the flow rating from that pump, many times providing pictures of the sump that's underneath the cover to verify that the cover is compliant. And then the flow ratings of the drain covers to make sure that it can be held by the pump that's in the pump room there.
I'll say, having been through a VGB season where I got to do the diving, it's cold in March, and it's a fair amount of work to make these changes. But there's a lot of science that goes into the changing of those pool covers, so a lot of work involved. You mentioned South Carolina does not pay as close of attention, but still something they need to do.
Yes.
Anything more on that?
Well, the fine can be up to a $20 million fine federally if you're found in out of compliance within that code. So pretty hefty fine for not being in compliance for it. Now, again, we don't have to submit those forms or verify with the county, but they've been pretty clear with their stance that it's your responsibility to make sure that you're in compliance with that standard.
And with it being a federal law, Ben, I was just going to mention, so across all 17 of our locations are replacing those, making sure they're within useful life, as well as documenting and having available their certificate of conformity or their certificate of compliance.
Yep.
Hopefully, so it's just the replacement of a drain cover, no harm, no foul. However, in North Carolina, they certainly are a little bit more stringent with we call them SOFAs, suction outlet fitting assemblies, where they have to have the correct configuration, as well as flow requirements, as Luke mentioned earlier.
So for those South Carolina board members that may have questions about VGB, just reach out to your pool professional and they should be able to supply that information, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
And at the very least, make sure that those drain covers are within their lifespan.
Okay.
And we have some coming up if you need to come back for old time's sakes, Ben.
No, thank you. So back to pool decks. Just a quick question on what causes decks to crack.
Sure. Yeah, great question. So a lot of times, oftentimes it could be it could be just the elements, right? Mother Nature is sometimes very cruel, and so that could be anything from ground movement, as well as the thawing or the freezing and unfreezing of the elements. There are some companies, and not all companies are equal, obviously, when people are doing concrete, that maybe the rebar or reinforcement that has been inside the concrete pour is not as rigid or not as strong as desired or required. And so concrete will usually break at the very weakest of points, right? That could mean expansion joints. That could mean where there is that movement. Brandon, Luke, any other additions to that?
No, the only thing guaranteed about concrete is that it's going to crack at some point.
Right.
Every deck, no matter how well you build it, will get some kind of crack. You hope that it cracks where it's designed to inside of those expansion joints. But like Michael said, there's different strengths of concrete when you pour it, different levels of PSI. There's different strengths of rebar, how closely and how far away the rebar is set. And then also you have to make sure that when pouring the concrete, that the rebar is lifted up to the center of the concrete.
Correct.
We found many of situations over the years that the rebar was laid, but it wasn't pulled up while they were pouring the deck. So the rebar stayed at the bottom, which doesn't really help with the strength of the concrete if it's stuck down in the bottom.
Okay. Water chemistry.
Water chemistry, of course, this is enforced by local health departments, but it's an extremely important part for a number of different things. First of all, patron safety. The chlorine is what kills the bacteria and the many of the harmful things inside the pool. So that's an important aspect of it. But it's also important due to the longevity of your equipment. Pool that's out of balance can affect the plaster surface, the tile, the equipment inside the pump room. The water chemistry has a huge impact on all of that. Even in the off season, when people aren't using the pool, the water chemistry is still extremely important due to those factors. We use automatic chemical controllers at all of our sites. That way, when we're only there, many of these places one time per day, or checking it once every other hour. The controllers will monitor and adjust the chemicals as needed. Very important, again, that a controller versus an erosion style feeder, they'll adjust to the needs of the chlorine. So if you have a higher bather load, you'll need a higher level of chlorine going into the pool many a times. And the automatic controllers will adjust those for us. It's a great piece of equipment that we can kind of use to make sure that the chemicals stay balanced when we're not there on site every single minute of the day. These are included in our contracts, like I just said, for any pool that has a large enough chemical room for tanks. There are some of these older buildings and smaller facilities that only have a small pump room and nowhere to use it. But we try to accommodate as many of these as we can to use for the controllers.
And those controllers, we will install peristaltic feeders on those, which will be generated by their demand. And so they'll electrify one of those feeders in order to pump either liquid chlorine or muriatic acid or sulfuric acid into the systems.
Okay. Staffing, favorite topic?
Again, there's a lot of different things with staffing. We have lifeguards, we have pool attendants, we have service techs that all serve a purpose at a number of different pools around. Again, depending on where you're located, they may have different staffing rules. One example is Mecklenburg County. Any pool greater than 5 feet depth, that's a county requirement that you have to maintain lifeguards at those facilities. Older pools, country clubs, things like that you see deep ends or diving areas in, those are required by Mecklenburg County to have lifeguards at. South Carolina also have the same thing for type E pools for the most part. If they have a slide or specific type of features, that can also require staff to be on site. And again, those things are all monitored by the health department. The lifeguards are on site anytime those are open. Personally, we train our own lifeguards. They must be certified to be a lifeguard. We use American Red Cross certification and have our instructors on staff. That allows us to be able to control what we're teaching still to the minimum of Red Cross, but also add in some of our own company policies at the same time with that. When a pool is staffed with lifeguards, we have to maintain the minimum ratio of 25 to 1 patrons to lifeguard standard. Again, that's something that can be different for every single facility based on the size of the pool, the shape of the pool, whether there's water features, diving boards, slides. All of those things can affect the swimmer ratio that's needed to make sure that we can have an adequate response time in case there's an incident for that. Again, we just hit on the attendance.
Brandon, I was going to also mention pool parties, things of that nature. If there's any type of extended event where there is a group of swimmers that are not expected, if there's alcohol at the pool, we usually upstaff and overstaff those events in order to make sure that those ratios are even more fine-tuned.
Yeah, those are high risk events. Again, you have patrons that are coming that aren't familiar with the pool, lifeguards that aren't familiar with the patrons, and many times for parties, there are people that are kids that are being dropped off that leave less parental supervision. So those are high risk events that generally extra lifeguard supervision should be considered during those events.
One item on that last slide as well, Brandon, was that we do additional and kind of ongoing training over and above the Red Cross requirements. We've been doing this for 40 plus years, and so we've learned a lot through the years on aquatic safety, as well as lifeguard vigilance, and teaching and training lifeguards how to be even more preventative rather than responsive. And so all of our lifeguards actually go through above and beyond a program called Lifeguard Ready Plus, where we have a number of our different protocols, some protocols that actually the Red Cross doesn't even teach anymore, but that are really non-negotiables for the way that we watch the water. So I just wanted to mention that as well.
So talking about lifeguards, any differences between North and South Carolina lifeguarding? Are the requirements the same?
Well, if you have a type E pool, something, for instance, a slide, the county actually dictates the number of pools based on the square footage and the patrons that are there at the pool. So there's a formula that's given in the DHEC code. Anytime there's a slide that makes it a type E pool, if you have 1 to 50 patrons at 3,000 square foot, you're required to have 4 lifeguards on duty at that time. 50 to 75 is 5 lifeguards. So they give you a formula that we have to follow as a company of how many lifeguards are on duty at a time, as well as we have to have an attendant on the top of the slide at South Carolina as well.
If I remember correctly, guarding in South Carolina is a state requirement. Guarding in North Carolina is county to county.
Yep.
So that's the biggest difference, I think.
Yeah, in North Carolina, the state code is the minimum, and then many counties will have additional codes or laws that must be followed on top of the state code that can make it more stringent. They can't go less stringent, but many of the local codes will make it more stringent than what North Carolina requires.
Right.
Okay. Attendance and service.
So I mentioned attendance a minute ago. The main description of an attendant is they control the gate and then keep the facility clean. They're less for the safety aspect inside the water, but they're going to control who comes into the facility, keep the facility clean, enforcing rules that are on the deck itself, but less of the rules inside the pool itself. So this is good. This is a good option for a pool that doesn't have lifeguards. But it's still a busy pool, a little busier than what just a service tech can be able to provide for that one visit per day in the morning time. It allows you to be able to close the facility at nighttime, take care of the closing duties, put the umbrellas down, get the trash emptied, and the pool will be ready to be reopened properly the next morning. Service, again, is a little bit different. We're there one time per day in most of our counties. There are a couple counties in North Carolina that require 2 visits per day. But the majority is 1 visit per day, and the same goes for South Carolina. Those have to be CPO visits, where a certified pool operator visit has to come and sign off on the logbook, check the chemicals, and log the logbook at minimum. But they'll also straighten the pool, straighten the pool deck, vacuum the pool, clean the restrooms, and maintain the overall facility, maintain the pump room as well. But that's done on a 1 visit per day basis and not throughout the day.
Okay.
Do you want to mention really quick, Brandon? Certified pool operator is certified. It's a national certification with the Pool and Hot Tub Association,
Yep.
which formerly known as the APSP, American Pool and Spa Association. There are some counties in North Carolina that actually require their own CPO training or certification on top of the national.
And South Carolina does that as well.
Okay, got it.
Okay, Michael, I know you talked a little bit about pool parties. Anything to add?
Sure. Yeah. And Brandon mentioned it, pool parties, usually a higher risk situation, partly because of just the sheer volume of swimmers and bathers at the time. We actually have some pretty stringent guidelines on pool parties and watching the water. We usually have our lifeguards, usually a manager, who will engage with the party host to make sure that we have additional eyes on the pool, whether that's chaperones or water watchers and things of that nature. We do, as I mentioned, apply additional lifeguarding in certain conditions, whether it be just sheer load, alcohol, college age students, things of that nature. We do make sure that we have additional eyes on the pool, additional resources. Um, Parties can get pretty rambunctious, so that's another thing that we take into consideration. So we really kind of go over all of the rules just to make sure that the lifeguards are feel like they are supported and the expectations are nice and clear.
And night swimming.
Again, something that's changed a number of times back and forth over the years. I'll start in South Carolina because that's the most clear cut. They have a lumens requirement, and generally it either has to be signed off on when the pool is being built, or it has to be signed off on a lighting engineer to make sure that it meets qualifications, which is 10 lumens per square foot of deck space in South Carolina. So you have to have an engineer that actually signs off on that to be able to get a night swimming permit. Not much that we can do for that. Like I said, it's either permitted that way or you have to get an engineer to sign off on it. North Carolina is quite a bit different. They used to follow the lumen guidelines, and they went back and forth a number of times where you had to have somebody verify the lumens and provide a certified letter in years past to now they actually do a nighttime inspection. So to obtain the first permit, when that happens, we have to meet the inspector on deck at nighttime, generally between 9 o'clock and 11 o'clock at night. And we meet them out there for that. And they have to verify that they can see all of the signage, depth markers, safety equipment, drain covers, everything around the pool itself, as well as a 6-foot area to the side of the pool. Again, many a times this is left up to the inspector's opinion on this, which makes this very difficult. Some inspectors are easier than others. If you get stuck with an inspector for the first time, you may get with a bad inspector and they're going to crack down pretty hard. Once you pass that primary inspection, the years after that, what you have to do is ensure that all of those lights are working, and they can verify that when they're out there for their regular inspection. And then they can just renew that permit at that point from there. Again, Union County has been very difficult for us in this regard, and Cabarrus County has been a little bit challenging in the market that I'm in personally. Mecklenburg County has generally been a little bit easier than other counties to get this permit in. So it's going to depend on the inspector for where that is. Pool parties at nighttime are a very hot topic lately. Movie nights have been pretty popular. And the hard part about movie nights, wanting to watch a movie from the pool, is that all of the lighting that your pool is passed with to obtain that permit has to be turned on during those events in order for you to remain in compliance during that time. Makes it pretty difficult to see the movie screen if you have all of the lights on and you're trying to watch a movie inside the pool so that the lifeguard or whoever else is there can still see the pool. It's basically eliminated most of these events with the laws the way that they are now. But still a question that we get asked probably once or twice a week throughout the season.
Okay. I think final slide, budgeting.
There's a number of ways that we can help with this. I know a lot of communities will go and get a reserve study done. We're happy to meet with or speak to the person doing the reserve study. We also have what we call a life cycle analysis, where we can take the large ticket items in your pool, in your pump room, your surface, your concrete. We can add a life expectancy as well as a ballpark for those items. We are able to do almost any repair that you can find in your pump room or on your pool deck. We're able to handle that in-house. So we can help with budgeting for those items with life cycles or assisting your own people to help with those.
Okay. Anything else on budgeting? So we can get into questions. First question. What do you do when you find a broken piece of glass in the pool?
Great question.
Do you have to drain it? What's proper protocol?
Colored glass, then typically in North Carolina, they'll allow you to vacuum it. Clear glass is a drain every single time. per the code.
Yeah, and that's a safety hazard, obviously, right? We have a lot of swimmers swimming around in the water. Glass can be an eye cutter, a foot cutter, a hand cutter, and so it's just something we don't mess with, and we want to make sure that that when we drain the pool, we're actually vacuuming every single square inch of the pool out whenever we have a glass event.
Okay. Do you recommend using pool pumps on automatic timers to turn off the pumps during the overnight hours if the pool chemistry is able to be maintained, saving money on power bills and unnecessary hours on pumps?
So North Carolina actually will not allow that with the health code. You have to continue turning it over. There are some places that you're able to use a variable speed pump and reduce it to a certain extent, but North Carolina in particular doesn't allow that to happen, at least with the inspectors that I've been aware of.
Yeah. Timer switches on pumps is a very residential backyard type of a standard or practice. As Brandon mentioned, every drop of water needs to actually pass through the filters. That's what he means by turnover. That water actually has to be passing through the filters in order for it to be safe and sanitary for swimmers during a certain time frame.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing just so you can see us better. But how many people make up a pool party?
Ooh.
It's
That's
a
a
very
good
fluid
question.
question.
Yeah, man, I don't know if I have the answer to that question. You can have a pool party with two people, I would imagine. I would say our standard is probably 10.
Yeah.
Anytime there's a 10-person load on the pool, because a lot of our ratios are kind of based on that. We do subscribe to the American Red Cross, a 1 to 25, but even just 10 swimmers in a body of water or a zone of responsibility puts a heavier load on the lifeguard. So we'll stick with 10 as to constitute a pool party.
Okay, I want to go back to the discussion around people on the pool deck. And so to be clear, people in the pool area, it must be closed if you don't have a year-round inspection. Is that correct?
Until you've obtained once people are allowed on your pool deck, we are supposed to be there every day to check the chemicals and log the logbook once people are allowed to go on your pool deck.
Okay, simple question. Do you currently service or plan to service Bald Head Island, North Carolina? And
Brandon?
That's a Savannah question.
So,
Not at the moment, Ben. We're not looking there right now. Yeah, it's a little outside of our footprint at the moment.
okay, and I know we're going a little long. I have a few more questions to get
Right.
to. So if you do need to jump off, feel free to jump off, but we'll try and answer a few questions. So you talked about codes and types of pools in South Carolina and how to determine the class of pool. Is there an easy way or a formula that you can share on where to determine what class of pool we are?
Yep. South Carolina DHEC gives a pretty clear breakdown in their code, which you can easily Google that. But like type, oh my gosh, type B pools is your normal HOA style pool, condo pools, anything like that. Type E pool is basically a type E pool with a slide, or a type B pool with a slide.
Right.
Then you start running into apartment complexes, therapy pools, amusement park pools, a number of different things. But it's type A through E, and the breakdown is written in the code pretty clearly.
So Google DHEC swim pool codes.
Yep.
You certainly can. I will also say the emergence of ChatGPT and these large language models are making code navigation much easier for the general public. So I would pop that into ChatGPT, and they're usually pretty good. The responses are usually pretty good.
Okay, I like this question, but how do pool companies feel about dog swim days on the
Wow.
last day of the pool being open?
Wonderful question. Yeah.
Well,
Go ahead, Brandon. I'll answer after you.
Mecklenburg County actually sent a memo out 2 years ago that that said you couldn't do this any longer. So they don't allow pool dogs to get into the pools at any point in time. Um, some people choose to ignore that, and I just truthfully, when I hear it, I just don't tell me what you're going to do at that point in time. But Mecklenburg County has banned that because of some of the complications that have come after the dog days for it.
Yeah, and I love my dogs. My dogs love to swim. I'm not a huge fan of it. I think it does put an unnecessary load on the filtration systems. It puts a lot of dirt and sediment into the water that we actually can't necessarily see that lives in suspension of the water. Luke was mentioning how hard that is to get into opening, and you have to vacuum a lot of that stuff out to waste. If you allow that kind of in the last day, it might even actually add or delay to your opening time frame because all that sediment has to go somewhere. Also, chlorine's not the nicest on dog skin. And so that's just another thing to think and consider is the health of the animal too. Again, my dogs love to swim. They've been in a pool before. I'm not going to lie, but I am not a huge fan of it for all of our communities.
Okay, another question. When are you coming back to Greenville, South Carolina?
It's another great question. Nothing in the plans so far. Obviously, wonderful market. We had some great individuals there, some great communities there. It's a thriving market. But as it stands right now, it's not on the horizon as that's just what I can say at this moment.
But it is one of my wife's favorite places to visit.
I love Greenville.
I'll say there's another question about a coastal market. So it looks like expansion may be in your future.
Indeed. Yeah, I think so.
You did mention the Savannah market, but I know you do have an office in Savannah that probably
We do.
services Hilton Head, which is outside of our market. But okay, some of the preseason checklists are coming in with a $4,000 to $5,000 invoice, or at least estimated invoice. Is this typical for a pool that has less than 10 years or is less than 10 years old, aside from chemicals?
Luke, do you want to talk about that? It seems a little high, but
So yeah, so our checklist or pool parts list is mostly just that, pool parts, and so it would be things like vacuum hoses, flow meters, signage. Which for us, it's going to be pretty difficult to get up to that $4,000 to $5,000 range, even at a new pool we're just taking over that's been neglected. To get to that range, we would have some repair items in there too. Drain cover replacements and things like that, equalizer covers. So I'd take a pretty hard look at that list and try to figure out what's causing that number, because that's fairly high.
Well, and we're far from perfect, don't get me wrong, but anything with that kind of monetary figure, we try to help budget for that in the fall time of of an expense that could be coming up the following year. I'm not going to say we do it every time. I've missed things over the years myself a number of times, but we try as hard as we can if it's going to be that kind of number to give a little bit of a heads up or notice during budget season so that we can help you guys plan for that.
yeah, we don't like surprises either. So yeah, Brandon's absolutely right. We try to prepare you as well as us as best as possible for any large expenditures. That does sound high, and so to Luke's point, I would do a little bit more digging, and as well as leveraging some of your resources and maybe getting a second opinion.
But motors do freeze, filters do crack,
Mhm.
pipes do rupture, and then umbrellas get expensive. Umbrellas always seem to break.
Yeah.
So
Yes,
You're absolutely right, man. Yeah.
that is a common need.
that also is one of the items that I feel like that I've missed in years past. Truthfully, that was what I was referring to.
For sure.
Right.
So I'll make this the last question. So OSHA requirements. How, didn't hear y'all talk about OSHA. What do communities need to know as it relates to that federal requirement?
Sure. Let me mention OSHA just kind of at a 32,000 foot level. Obviously, OSHA we are governed by OSHA laws and OSHA requirements. I've been a part of a lot of boards as well as a lot of investigation on OSHA violations. We've had OSHA come to our pools in a number of different markets. And so the biggest thing that a lot of these OSHA inspectors are actually looking for is that you have PPE, protective equipment on site and on the person when they're at the particular facility. Eye wash stations, aprons, eyewear, gloves, face shields when you're dealing with chemicals. All of these are important pieces of equipment. Closed-toed shoes or foot safety is another thing when we're dealing with pump rooms. And so we actually do an OSHA kind of an audit at every single one of our facilities. It's actually on Luke's inventory list that he mentioned. There are a number of different requirements. The thing that I've kind of realized the most is that there is a federal OSHA requirement, and then there's usually a state or even county level requirement. So if there are any questions about any of those, I would definitely say use your resources, use Google, use ChatGPT on what the particular requirement is in your area. And then your pool professional should know what those requirements are, because typically that might mean installing items or installing an OSHA station out at the pools. We install them on every single one of our pools, and we do make sure that they're stocked every single year.
Okay, and I lied about being the last question. I did have a question about first aid kits that are required to be at a pool deck. And I didn't know how much first aid was needed. So what is
Yeah.
needed as far as a first aid kit?
Go ahead,
Well,
Brandon.
South Carolina requires, again, this goes into different markets, different standards. Um, South Carolina has a code in there that's required to provide a CPO mask, required to have basic first aid, such as Band-Aids, gauze, cleaning wipes, things like that, which is basically the standard of North Carolina as well. But that's not a county pool code as first aid kits. It's more of a convenience type of item in the state of North Carolina. Now, most pools, you're going to run into bee stings, stub toes, injuries that are going to happen when you have kids running around a pool deck. So it's always a good idea to have them or provide that. But I've seen people go with $300 metal first aid kits or the $25 ones from CBS. There's not really a standard as long as you have basic first aid covered in there.
Okay.
I just to piggyback on that, I actually do like to provide and sell kits that are ANSI and OSHA certified, Ben. Many of those come with bloodborne pathogen blood cleanup kits as well, and just ensuring that those are replenished. Make sure that we have enough for our staff. Not only is it great for for individuals who have any type of medical or first aid emergencies or nicks and cuts, but it also protects the person administering the care.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Well, that is it. Michael,
Great.
Brandon, Luke, thank you very much. Hope
Thank
you
you,
have
guys.
a great
Thank you.
pool season and a safe pool season. Thank you, all of those that are still with us. Yeah,
Yeah. Thank
hope
you
you
for the
all have a
questions.
great season too. So with that, I will remind everyone we do record these. You can find it on our website, camsmgt.com, under the board member resources, and hope you tell your other co-board members to take a look. So with that, I will say good night.